Thank you for providing all the details. I'll create a compelling, realistic 4-chapter story about Abigail's transformation journey in the United States, written in English, with approximately 1,100 words per chapter. The story will follow her physical and emotional journey as she loses 170 pounds and discovers her inner strength, dealing with societal pressures and personal growth along the way. And from laughingstock to legend, Abigail lost 170 pounds and found her power. Chapter 1. The fluorescent lights of Peterson Marketing buzzed overhead as Abigail Matthews squeezed herself into the conference room chair, feeling the familiar pinch of the armrests against her sides. At 32, she had mastered the art of making herself smaller, hunching her shoulders, crossing her arms over her chest, anything to occupy less space in a world that constantly reminded her she took up too much of it. "We need someone with more presence for this client pitch," Richard, the creative director, announced, his eyes sliding past Abigail, though she had drafted the entire presentation. "Jennifer, you'll lead the team." Jennifer, tall, slim, confident, nodded, flashing a sympathetic smile at Abigail that didn't reach her eyes. This was nothing new. Despite her Harvard MBA and 5 years at the company, Abigail remained invisible except when she became the butt of office jokes. The Dunkin' Donuts boxes mysteriously appearing on her desk, the wheezing sounds when she climbed the stairs, the concerned comments about her health that were thinly veiled judgments. Later that evening, Abigail stood in her Brooklyn apartment, staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror she usually avoided. 297 pounds. She'd been overweight since childhood, but the past 5 years of 60-hour work weeks, stress eating and loneliness had added another 50 pounds to her frame. Her phone pinged with a notification from her high school reunion page. 10-year reunion in 6 months. Comments flooded in from former classmates, most unrecognizable from their profile pictures, thinner, more polished versions of their teenage selves. Memories washed over her. Flabigail, they'd called her. The Valentine's card from the football team as a cruel joke. Prom night spent alone, watching movies with her mother. "Not this time," Abigail whispered, her voice cracking in the empty apartment. She scrolled through her phone and dialed a number she'd saved months ago, but never had the courage to call. "Horizon Health and Fitness. This is Marcus speaking." Abigail took a deep breath. "I'd like to schedule a consultation with a personal trainer." The following morning, Abigail entered Horizon, feeling like an imposter. The gym was filled with sculpted bodies in tight-fitting clothes, moving with confidence she couldn't fathom. She clutched her oversized t-shirt, already regretting her decision. "Abigail, I'm Elena Rodriguez." A woman with kind eyes and a sturdy build approached. Not the rail-thin fitness model Abigail had expected, but someone with visible muscle definition and a warm smile. "Let's talk in my office." In Elena's modest office, decorated with before and after photos and motivational quotes, Abigail expected the usual lecture about obesity-related diseases and crash diets. Instead, Elena asked, "Why are you here, Abigail? And I don't mean the number on the scale." The unexpected question broke something open inside her. "I'm tired of being invisible," Abigail admitted, tears threatening. "Or worse, only visible as a joke. I have ideas, skills, ambitions, but no one sees past this." She gestured at her body. Eleanor nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I've been there. Not as heavy, but I know what it's like to be reduced to your appearance. Here's what I tell all my clients. This journey isn't about losing weight. It's about gaining power. I've tried every diet," Abigail said, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Nothing sticks. Because diets are about restriction, not empowerment," Elena replied. "We're going to approach this differently. Small, sustainable changes, building strength, physical and mental. And most importantly, we're going to find movement that brings you joy." Joy wasn't something Abigail associated with physical activity. Her last memories of enjoyable movement were from childhood, swimming in her grandmother's lake in Minnesota, before self-consciousness took over. "I can't remember the last time I felt powerful," Abigail confessed, Elena's eyes softened. Then that's our first goal, not a number on the scale, a feeling. Now, let's create a realistic plan that fits your life. They developed a strategy, walking 3 times a week to start, gradually incorporating strength training and making incremental nutrition changes. No crash diets, no elimination of food groups, just mindful eating and portion awareness. This won't be quick, Elena warned. Real transformation never is. That evening, Abigail stood in her kitchen, surveying the takeout containers and frozen meals that had become her staples. With newfound determination, she cleared them out, replacing them with simple ingredients Elena had recommended. She downloaded a step tracking app and set a modest goal of 5,000 steps daily. As she prepared a simple meal of grilled chicken and roasted vegetables, her phone rang. It was her mother calling from Minnesota. "How was your day, honey?" her mother asked, the familiar concern in her voice. Abigail hesitated, considering whether to share her new commitment. Her mother had always been supportive, but had her own complicated relationship with weight and body image. Telling her would make this real and open the possibility of failure. "I started something new today," Abigail finally said, stirring the vegetables in the pan. "Something for me?" "That's wonderful," her mother replied, curiosity evident. "What is it?" Abigail took a deep breath. "I'm making some changes, health changes. I met with a trainer today." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Her mother had witnessed countless diet attempts, exercise equipment purchases, and tearful declarations of change throughout the years. "That sounds positive," her mother finally said, carefully neutral. "Just be kind to yourself, Abby." After hanging up, Abigail felt a familiar wave of doubt. Who was she kidding? She'd fail like every other time. People like her didn't get transformations. They just continued disappearing into the background of life, while others took center stage. But as she plated her simple meal and sat alone at her kitchen table, something felt different. The conversation with Elena replayed in her mind. This journey wasn't about losing weight. It was about gaining power. For the first time in years, Abigail felt a flicker of something unfamiliar taking root inside her. Not hope exactly. She'd been disappointed too many times for that, but possibility. The possibility that beneath the layers of fat and shame and invisibility, there might be a version of herself worth fighting for. Chapter 2. 3 months into her transformation journey, Abigail gripped the metal bar of the lat pull-down machine, her breathing labored but controlled as Eleanor counted 8, 9, 10. Great job. The gym no longer felt like foreign territory. 3 weekly sessions with Eleanor had graduated to 5 days of mixed training, some with her trainer, others independently following carefully designed programs. What had begun as an intimidating space now felt, if not comfortable, at least familiar. "You've added 15 pounds to your pull-down weight since last month," Elena noted, updating Abigail's progress chart. "Your strength is building faster than expected." Abigail wiped sweat from her brow, suppressing a smile. Physical achievement still felt strange to celebrate. Decades of gym class humiliation had conditioned her to associate exercise with shame, not pride. Yet the numbers didn't lie. She was getting stronger. The scale showed progress too. 27 pounds lost so far from dramatic but sustainable. More noticeable was how her clothes fit differently, how climbing the subway stairs no longer left her winded, how she slept more soundly at night. "You're quiet today," Elena observed as they stretched. "Everything okay?" Abigail hesitated. "My boss asked me to lead the pitch meeting tomorrow. It's the first time I've been given that responsibility." "That's fantastic. You should be excited." "I'm terrified," Abigail admitted. "I've lost some weight, but I'm still the fattest person in the office. What if they're just setting me up to fail?" Eleanor's expression turned serious. "Abigail, you've been doing the work, not just physically, but showing up consistently, challenging yourself. Your body is changing, yes, but more importantly, you carry yourself differently now. People notice that kind of transformation." Later that evening, Abigail faced another challenge. dinner with her college roommate Mia at a trendy Manhattan restaurant. They met quarterly, but Abigail had been avoiding these dinners since starting her program, finding it easier to control her eating at home. "Abby!" Mia exclaimed, rising from the table to embrace her. "You look amazing! You've lost weight, haven't you?" Something about Mia's enthusiastic greeting set Abigail's teeth on edge. Yes, she'd lost weight, but was that all people would ever see? 27 pounds down, and suddenly she was visible again. "I've been working with a trainer," Abigail said simply, settling into her chair and studying the menu. Eleanor had coached her on restaurant strategies: check the menu beforehand, decide what to order in advance, focus on protein and vegetables. "Well, it's working. You must be so happy," Mia continued, sipping her cocktail. "I always thought if you just lost the weight, you'd be unstoppable. You've got everything else going for you. Brains, personality." The backhanded compliment stung. Abigail took a deep breath, remembering Elena's words about boundaries and self-respect. "Actually, Mia, I am happy, but not just because of the weight loss. I'm feeling stronger, physically and mentally. The training has given me a different kind of confidence." Mia looked momentarily taken aback, then recovered with a smile. "Of course, that's what I meant. So are you seeing anyone? There's this guy at my office who might be perfect for you, especially now that you're, you know." "Now that I'm what?" Abigail challenged, surprising herself with her directness. Mia flushed. "I just meant, you're working on yourself." The old Abigail would have let it slide, eager to avoid conflict. The new Abigail, the one who had learned to push through physical discomfort on the weightlifting platform, held her ground. "I've always been working on myself, Mia. My career, my education, my personal growth. My body is just one aspect of who I am." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only when the waiter arrived to take their orders. Abigail chose grilled salmon with vegetables, declining the wine Mia suggested. "You're really serious about this," Mia observed, a note of admiration creeping into her voice. "It's not about the diet," Abigail explained. "It's about honoring commitments I make to myself. That's new for me." The conversation shifted to safer topics. Mia's job in publishing, mutual friends from college, the exorbitant cost of New York living. Yet Abigail felt a fundamental shift in their dynamic. For perhaps the first time, she hadn't defaulted to self-deprecation or tried to make herself smaller to accommodate someone else's discomfort. The next morning, Abigail prepared for her presentation with methodical care. Her suit still fit loosely, but she'd had it tailored rather than buying new clothes. Elena had advised against investing in an entirely new wardrobe until her weight stabilized. At the conference room, Richard raised his eyebrows as she connected her laptop to the projector. "Big day, Abigail. The Westridge account could put us on the map." She nodded, arranging her notes while the clients filed in. 3 men in expensive suits, exuding the particular confidence of those who'd never questioned their right to occupy space. "Gentlemen," Abigail began, her voice steadier than she felt. "Thank you for the opportunity to present our vision for Westridge Properties rebranding." As she moved through the slides, something unexpected happened. The physical awareness she'd developed in the gym, the mindfulness of posture, the controlled breathing through discomfort, translated to the boardroom. She stood taller, moved with purpose, and maintained eye contact rather than hiding behind her presentation. "What sets our approach apart," she concluded, "is our understanding that luxury real estate isn't about buildings. It's about identity. Westridge doesn't just sell properties. You sell belonging, achievement, legacy." The lead client, a silver-haired man named Donovan, studied her thoughtfully. "You've clearly done your homework, Ms. Matthews. Your analysis of our competitors' positioning was particularly insightful." The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of follow-up conversations. As the clients departed, Richard lingered behind. "That was unexpected," he said, his tone unreadable. Abigail gathered her materials, a question forming that she would never have dared ask 3 months ago. "Why did you choose me for this presentation, Richard?" He hesitated, as if weighing his words. You've changed recently. There's a confidence that wasn't there before. I thought it might resonate with the clients. Because I've lost weight? She pressed, testing her newfound courage. Richard looked uncomfortable. Not just that. You're more present now. You speak up in meetings. You defend your ideas. Whatever you're doing, it's working. As Abigail walked back to her office, she felt conflicted. Richard had noticed her transformation, but his acknowledgement was double-edged. Confirmation that her previous invisibility had been at least partly by design, a corporate culture that valued appearance alongside ability. That evening, she logged her workout in the journal Elena had suggested keeping, not just exercises and measurements, but reflections on her changing relationship with her body and herself. Today, I took up space, she wrote. Not just physically, but with my voice, my ideas, my presence. And for the first time, I didn't apologize for it. Chapter 3. The sharp November wind cut through Central Park as Abigail completed her second lap around the reservoir. 6 months into her journey, running had become an unexpected sanctuary. Not the punishment she'd always believed it to be, but a moving meditation that cleared her mind and connected her to her body in ways she'd never experienced. 49 pounds down, almost halfway to her initial weight goal, though Eleanor continued to emphasize that the numbers were secondary to how Abigail felt and what her body could do. And it could do so much more now. 5-mile runs, deadlifting her own body weight, 30 consecutive push-ups, modified, but still progress. Her phone vibrated with a text from her mother. Don't forget, flight lands at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Can't wait to see you, honey. Abigail quickened her pace, anxiety fueling her strides. She hadn't seen her mother in person since starting her transformation. Weekly video calls couldn't fully capture the physical changes, and she'd been strategic about camera angles, not ready to discuss the full extent of her commitment. Back at her apartment, she opened her closet to plan outfits for her mother's visit. Her wardrobe was in transition, old clothes too baggy, yet she resisted buying many new pieces caught between her former and future self. For important work events, she'd invested in a few tailored items, but mostly she existed in a limbo of safety-pinned waistbands and oversized sweaters. The high school reunion was just weeks away now. Abigail had initially set it as her target, to return transformed, a visual rebuke to those who had mocked her. Yet as the date approached, her motivation had evolved. Yes, she wanted to look different, but more importantly, she wanted to feel different walking those hallways again, powerful rather than apologetic. Her doorbell rang the next afternoon precisely at 3:30. Her mother, Nancy Matthews, was nothing if not punctual. "Abby!" Nancy gasped as the door opened, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my goodness!" Abigail self-consciously smoothed her fitted sweater. "Hi, Mom. You didn't tell me it was this much," Nancy said, stepping forward to embrace her daughter. You look incredible." Abigail returned the hug, noticing how differently their bodies fit together now. "It's been gradual. I didn't want to make a big deal about it." Nancy pulled back, studying her daughter's face. "But it is a big deal, honey. You must be so proud." Something in her mother's expression, the unmistakable relief, the approval, triggered a complicated emotion in Abigail. Was she only worthy of this enthusiasm now that she was shrinking? "I'm proud of what my body can do," Abigail said carefully, taking her mother's suitcase. "The weight loss is a side effect of getting stronger." Nancy followed her into the apartment, her eyes widening at the visible changes there too. The yoga mat in the corner, the kettlebells by the window, the refrigerator magnets with Elena's mantras, "Strong has no size," and "Consistency over perfection." "You've really committed to this," Nancy observed, settling onto the couch. "What made this time different?" It was the question Abigail had been asking herself for months. Why had this attempt succeeded where dozens had failed? "I found the right support," she began, thinking of Elena, "but also, I think I finally got angry enough, not at my body, but at letting others determine my worth based on it." Nancy's expression softened with a hint of guilt. I always worried about your weight because I didn't want you to face the kind of judgment I did. Your generation was supposed to be beyond all that. We're not, Abigail said simply, but I'm learning to care less about it. Over dinner at Abigail's favorite farm-to-table restaurant, where she now knew the chef by name from her regular visits, Nancy shared community gossip from back home, carefully avoiding direct comments about Abigail's transformation, though her eyes frequently took inventory of her daughter's changed silhouette. "And how's work?" Nancy finally asked. "Has your boss noticed your dedication?" Abigail set down her fork. "Mum, can we address the elephant in the room? Yes, I've lost weight. Yes, people at work treat me differently now, which is both gratifying and infuriating. But I'm still the same person with the same brain and talents I had 50 pounds ago." Nancy looked startled, then contrite. "You're right, I'm sorry. It's just, you seem different, Abby. Not just physically, you're more direct, more present." "That's what my boss said too," Abigail admitted. "And that's the part that matters to me. I feel more entitled to take up space now, metaphorically speaking." Later that evening, as they prepared for bed, Nancy paused at the bathroom door. "There's something I never told you," she said hesitantly. "When I was in college before I met your father, I struggled with bulimia for nearly 2 years. Abigail stared at her mother, this new information reframing a lifetime of complex food messages and body anxieties. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I was ashamed," Nancy admitted, "and afraid that talking about it might somehow give you ideas. Then when you started struggling with your weight as a teenager, I was terrified of saying the wrong thing." "So you said almost nothing," Abigail realized, "except to suggest new diets." Nancy nodded, tears welling. "I thought I was protecting you. Instead, I probably made you feel like your body was a problem to solve rather than part of who you are." They stayed up late talking, unpacking decades of unspoken fears and misunderstandings. Nancy revealed how her own mother had put her on diets starting at age 9, how she'd measured her worth by the number on the scale through most of her youth. "I wanted better for you," Nancy concluded. "I just didn't know how to give it to you." The next morning, Abigail invited her mother to join her at Horizon. "You don't have to work out," she clarified. "I just want you to meet Elena." Elena welcomed Nancy warmly, taking time to explain her philosophy. "We focus on ability, not appearance," she told Nancy. "Abigail isn't succeeding because she's losing weight. She's succeeding because she's discovering what her body is capable of." Nancy watched as Abigail moved through her training session, squatting with weights that would have seemed impossible months ago, performing pull-ups with minimal assistance. "She's not the same girl who left Minnesota," Nancy remarked quietly to Elena. "I barely recognize her confidence." "That's the real transformation," Elena replied. "The physical changes are just the visible part." Later, as they walked through a crisp autumn afternoon in Brooklyn, Nancy asked, "Are you nervous about the reunion?" Abigail considered the question. "Not in the way I expected to be. I thought I wanted to go back and show everyone how much I'd changed. But now, I'm more interested in showing myself how much I've changed, how I can walk into a room full of people who once made me feel worthless and still know my own value." Nancy squeezed her daughter's hand. "For what it's worth, I always saw your value, Abby. I just worried the world wouldn't." "The world still might not," Abigail acknowledged, "but I'm learning that their failure to see it doesn't diminish it." That night, after her mother had gone to sleep, Abigail received an email from Richard. The Westridge clients had signed with their agency, the largest account they'd landed in years. The subject line read simply, "You did this." A surge of satisfaction warmed her chest, not because the success would finally make her visible to her colleagues, but because it confirmed what she'd always known. Her worth extended far beyond her appearance. The world was just finally catching up to that reality. Chapter 4. The ballroom of the Marriott Hotel was transformed with blue and silver decorations, the colors of Lakeside High School, as Abigail stood at the entrance, momentarily frozen. 10 years compressed into a single evening, faces both familiar and strange mingling under dimmed lights. "You okay?" Elena asked beside her. Abigail had surprised herself by inviting her trainer to accompany her to the reunion, not as a shield, but as a witness to how far she'd come. "I'm ready," Abigail replied, squaring her shoulders beneath her navy dress, size 14, down from 24, though the number mattered less to her now than how the fabric skimmed her stronger frame, how she no longer felt the need to hide behind excess material. 8 months, 70 pounds. Not the dramatic before and after of reality television, but a sustainable transformation built on thousands of small decisions, countless early mornings, and a fundamental shift in how she valued herself. Conversations paused as they moved through the crowd, recognition dawning on faces with varying degrees of subtlety. Some stared openly, others pretended not to notice while stealing glances when they thought she wasn't looking. "Abigail? Abigail Matthews?" A tall man approached, his face vaguely familiar beneath the adult polish. "It's Derek Collins. We had AP English together." Derek, who had sat behind her for a year without ever learning her name until they were paired for a project. Derek, who had acted as though working with her was a punishment. "Of course, Derek. How are you?" Her voice came out steady, neither overly eager nor cold. "I'm good. Working in finance in Chicago. Married. 2 kids. He gestured to a blonde woman across the room. "You look different. Really great." Once, this attention from Derek would have validated her entire existence. Now, it barely registered as important. "Thanks. This is my friend Elena Rodriguez." Elena shook his hand with the firm grip Abigail had come to associate with her. Solid, unapologetic. They made their way through the room, Abigail accepting compliments with simple thanks, deflecting invasive questions about her secret with humor. "Turns out it's not actually a secret, just consistent effort and changing my relationship with food and movement." The evening progressed like an anthropological study of human behavior. Former tormentors approached with selective amnesia about their cruelty. Women who had never spoken to her in high school suddenly claimed long-standing friendship. The dynamics were as predictable as they were disheartening. "Abby?" A voice cut through the noise, and Abigail turned to find Jennifer Reyes, once her only friend at Lakeside before college and distance had separated them. "I would have known you anywhere." Unlike the others, Jennifer's embrace felt genuine, her eyes meeting Abigail's with real warmth. "You look happy," Jennifer said. "That's what's different about you." They found a quiet corner to catch up. Jennifer was now a pediatrician in Portland, married to her college girlfriend. As they talked, Abigail felt the weight of the evening lifting. Here was someone who had known her at her heaviest and had valued her anyway. "I always thought you'd do something incredible," Jennifer said. "You were the smartest person in our class, but no one could see past my size," Abigail finished for her. "It's okay to say it," Jennifer nodded. "It made me so angry how they treated you. How are you handling tonight? It must be surreal." "It's clarifying," Abigail admitted. "I thought coming back thinner would feel like vindication. Instead, it just highlights how shallow it all was, how shallow it still is." The DJ announced the senior superlative slideshow, a reunion tradition. Images flashed across the screen, most likely to succeed, best-dressed class clown. Then class heartbreaker, showing Derek Collins in his football uniform. "And the award they never announced," came a voice from nearby. Melissa Barnes, former head cheerleader. "Biggest loser." She raised her champagne glass toward Abigail, a smirk playing at her lips. "Congratulations, Flabbigail, you finally fit in." The old nickname landed like a slap. The room seemed to still, attention turning their way. Elena tensed beside her, but Abigail placed a gentle hand on her arm. "That's interesting, Melissa," Abigail said, her voice carrying clearly. "I've actually been thinking about what I've lost and gained these past months. I've lost 70 pounds, yes, but I've gained the understanding that my value was never determined by my size, not when I was bigger, and not now." She stepped closer to Melissa, whose smirk had faltered. I've lost the belief that I needed to shrink myself, physically or metaphorically, to deserve respect. I've gained the certainty that people who define others by their appearance are showing their limitations, not mine. Abigail looked around the room, at the faces of people who had once held such power over her self-perception. The real transformation wasn't in my body. It was in realizing that waiting for external validation is a game you can never win. True power comes from defining success on your own terms. She raised her water glass. So thank you, Melissa, for reminding me what I've really lost, the need for approval from people who never saw me in the first place. A moment of silence followed, broken by Jennifer's enthusiastic, "Hear, hear." Soon others joined in, applause spreading across the room, not for her weight loss, but for her words, her confidence, her refusal to accept the old narrative. Later, as they drove back to their hotel, Elena glanced at Abigail. "That was quite a moment back there. How do you feel?" Abigail watched the familiar streets of her hometown pass by, streets where she had once felt so constrained, so defined by others' perceptions. "I feel like I've been carrying something heavy for years, and I finally set it down." "The weight?" Eleanor asked. "The shame," Abigail corrected. "The belief that I needed to be different, to be worthy." The next morning, before flying back to New York, Abigail visited her childhood home one last time. Her father had passed away 5 years earlier, but his presence still lingered in the workshop behind the house where he'd taught her to build things, birdhouses, shelves, a hope chest for her 18th birthday. "He always saw you clearly," her mother said, joining her among the sawdust and tools. "He used to say you were made of stronger stuff than anyone knew." Abigail ran her fingers over her father's workbench. "I wish he could see me now." "Oh, he'd be proud," Nancy agreed, "but not because you lost weight. He'd be proud because you finally see what he always saw. Your power was never about your size." Back in New York, life resumed its rhythm, but with subtle differences. At work, Abigail was assigned to lead a team developing a campaign for a major fitness brand. The irony wasn't lost on her. "We want authenticity," she told her creative team. "Real bodies, real stories of transformation that go beyond before and after photos. What changes in someone's life when they connect with their physical strength? How does it reshape their world?" The campaign launched to acclaim, featuring diverse bodies and stories, emphasizing the mental and emotional aspects of fitness alongside the physical. One ad showed a plus-size woman deadlifting impressive weight with the tagline, "Strength has no size." Elena framed a copy of the ad for her office wall. "You're changing the narrative," she told Abigail during their now weekly training session. "Not just for yourself." Nearly a year after that first consultation at Horizon, Abigail stood on the stage of a community center in Brooklyn. The room was filled with women of varying sizes, ages, and backgrounds, participants in the non-profit program she'd founded with Elena, using part of her bonus from the Westridge account. "My story isn't about weight loss," Abigail began. "It's about weight lifting, not just physically, but lifting the weight of other people's expectations and judgments, lifting the weight of shame that keeps us small." She looked out at the faces watching her, some skeptical, some hopeful, all searching for something beyond the empty promises of diet culture. "The scale will tell you a number," she continued, "but it can't measure your worth, your strength, or your impact on the world. Those measurements come from within." After the workshop, a young woman approached her, heavy-set with intelligent eyes and nervous hands. "Do you really believe that?" she asked Abigail. "That size doesn't determine value?" "I do," Abigail answered. "But more importantly, I live it. And you can too. You." Later that evening, Abigail updated her journal, the same one she'd started a year ago, now filled with not just workout data, but reflections on her evolving relationship with her body and herself. She wrote not about pounds or inches, but about moments of power. Standing up to Melissa at the reunion, seeing her campaign on billboards, mentoring young women who reminded her of herself. Her phone pinged with a text from Richard. "Berkeley account wants you specifically." Said they were impressed by your authenticity. She smiled, setting the phone aside. External validation was pleasant but no longer necessary. The true measure of her transformation wasn't in others' recognition, but in the quiet certainty she'd developed, the knowledge that her voice mattered, her presence had impact, her worth was intrinsic. Abigail closed her journal and stood before the mirror, not scrutinizing, as she once would have, but acknowledging. Her body was still changing, still a work in progress, but then it always would be. The difference was that she no longer waited for a specific weight or size to start living fully. The journey from laughingstock to legend wasn't marked by the pounds she'd lost, but by the power she'd found. The power that had been there all along, beneath layers of doubt and shame, waiting to be recognized, claimed, and wielded with purpose.